What's going on, you guys? Welcome to another reading of Beheld a Pale Horse by William Cooper. We ended up leaving off where William Cooper describes him witnessing a UFO come out the ocean while he was on deck with his crew. And I was just curious. I wanted to see, since 1991, since this book been published, how many sightings or videos or any of that have been recorded or been reported of UFO sightings. And I just typed it in. Sure enough, a website came up. I believe it's called UFO Report Center. And they have everything from, what to look for, the actual recent reports of sightings. There's some videos. I was able to take pictures of those videos just so you can see what I'm talking about, of people actually witnessing UFO sightings. So I was curious, how many sightings have there been since 1991 to present time, 2025? And I was surprised. I was clueless about this, but I was surprised. It was over 150,000 sightings, reports, all that since 1991. Go check that website out. I just looked it up real quick, and I'm going to just end up reading a couple of things in there to see, what are they really talking about? I know that the Pentagon has actually came out and acknowledged that yes, there is UFOs that have been spotted, recorded. Some have even taken action against the UFOs, but they've been able to dodge missiles, which is very dangerous. If that is true, that is very dangerous to do because we don't know what they are, who they are, and what they're here for. But I'm going to go on with this reading. So here we go. This time I had 3 images from which to draw conclusions. It was a metal machine. Of that, there was no doubt whatsoever. It was intelligently controlled. Of that, I was equally sure. It was a dual color, kind of like Peter. What that color is, it's like a gray oleo of tint with copper, some type of material, some type of color looking. There were no lights. There was no glow. I thought I had seen a row of what looked like portholes, but I could not be certain. Radar reported contact at the same bearing and gave us a range of 3 nautical miles. The range was right on, as the craft had moved towards the general direction that we were headed. We watched repeatedly as the strange craft re-entered the water and then subsequently rose into the clouds over and over again until finally we knew that it was gone for good. The episode lasted about 10 minutes. Just imagine that. You're in the ocean. I don't own a boat, but people that have been on a boat, people that have been in the ocean, I myself scared of the ocean. I've only been in a boat once. Yeah, the ocean's pretty scary. So now imagine you seeing that over and over. And they're in the Navy. So most likely they're literally in the middle of the ocean and being able to witness that. I don't know. To me, that'd be pretty scary. I don't know how we react, but that is wild. Before leaving the bridge, the captain took the camera from the chief and instructed each of us not to talk to anybody about what we had seen. He told us the incident was classified and we were not to discuss it, not even amongst ourselves. We acknowledged his order. The captain and the chief left the bridge. Ensign Ball stepped to the one mic and pressed the override switch. Announced, "This is Ensign Ball. The captain has left the bridge. I have the con." The reply, "Hey, sir," quickly followed. Those of us who had witnessed the UFO were not allowed to go ashore after we had berthed in Pearl. Even those of us who didn't have the duty were told we had to stay aboard. After about 2 hours, a commander from the Office of Naval Intelligence boarded. He went directly to the captain's stateroom. It wasn't long before we were told to wait in the passenger way outside the captain's door. Ensign Ball was called first. After about 10 minutes, he came out and went into the wardrobe. He looked shaken. I was next. When I entered the stateroom, the commander was holding my service record in his hands. He wanted to know why I had gone from the Air Force into Navy. I told him the whole story and he laughed. when I said that after putting off the Navy for fear of chronic sickness, I hadn't been seasick yet. Suddenly, a mask dropped over his face, and looking me directly in the eyes, he asked, "What did you see out there?" "I believe it was a flying saucer, sir," I answered. The man began to visibly shake, and he screamed obscenities at me. He threatened to put me in the brig for the rest of my life. I thought he wasn't going to stop yelling, but as suddenly as he began, he stopped. I was confused. I had answered his questions truthfully, yet I was threatened with prison. I was not afraid, but I was not very confident either. I figured I had better taken another take. 18 years with my father and 4 years in the Air Force had taught me something. Number one was that officers just do not lose control like that, ever. Number two was that if my answer had elicited that explosion, then the next thing out of my mouth had better be something entirely different. Number three was that his response had been an act of kindness to get me arrive at exactly that conclusion. "Let's start all over again," he said. "What did you see out there?" "Nothing, sir," I answered. "I didn't see a damn thing, and I'd like to get out of here just as soon as possible." And a smile spread over his face, and the captain looked relieved. "Are you sure, Cooper?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I replied. "I'm sure." "You're a good sailor, Cooper," he said. "The Navy needs men like you. You'll go far with the Navy." He then asked me to read several pieces of paper that all said the same thing, only with different words. I read that if I ever talk about what it was that I didn't see, I could be fined up to $10,000 and imprisoned for up to 10 years or both. In addition, I could lose all pay, all allowances due, or even to become due. He asked me to sign a piece of paper stating that I would understand the laws and regulations that I had just read governing the safeguard of classified information relating to the national security. By signing, I agreed never to communicate in any manner any information regarding the incident with anyone. I was dismissed, and boy, was I glad to get out of there. Not long after that incident, I did volunteer from the Navy. I was transferred to the USS Tom Big B AOG /11. The Tom Big B was a gasoline tanker. It was more dangerous than the sub. The captain was crazy, and the crew was a combination of idiots and misfits. I once had to draw my pistol while I was petty officer of the watch to prevent an officer from being attacked by a seaman. The Tom Big B collided in the dead of night with a destroyer in the Malakia Canal, and several men died when the destroyer was almost cut in half. Every day aboard the ship was exactly like a scene right out of Mr. Roberts. I struck for quartermaster, navigating specialist, and managed to advance to the rank of second class petty officer despite the obvious obstacles. I made 2 Westpac tours aboard the Tom Big B. They included a total of 12 months off the coast of Vietnam. We came under machine gun fire while anchored off Chule. We had to do an emergency breakaway and leave the harbor. All we needed was one tracer around in one of the tanks, and kaboom! It would have been all over. The Viet Cong gunner probably got busted because the stupid jerk missed the whole damn ship. How can you miss a whole ship? The only other time I felt threatened was when we went up a small outpost at the DMZ called Cool Viet. It was a vision right out of hell. Cool Viet sat on the southern bank at the river mouth of Thich Han River. We rode at anchor and pumped fuel ashore through a bottom ley line. Every night we could see the tracers from firefights raging up and down the river and along the DMZ. It was a real hot spot. Every once in a while, Viet Cong or NBA rockets would slam into the camp, we would perform an emergency breakaway and put to sea until the all clear was sounded. Everything was cool until our wacko captain decided we were going into the river mouth. Did you ever try to put a pencil through the eye of a needle? That's about comparable to what we did. I'll never know how we got that big ship through the narrow mouth of that river with no navigational reference whatsoever. We dropped anchor mid-channel and the captain backed the ship right up to the beach and dropped the steam anchor into the sand. There we sat, a great big target full of gasoline. We were helpless in the mouth of a narrow river, with three anchors out, and right in the middle of one of the hottest combat zones in Vietnam. That night, several men in the crew wrote letters to the chief of naval operation requesting an immediate transfer. No one slept. I didn't know why the enemy didn't send in the rockets, but they didn't. I knew then that God must keep a special watch over fools. The next day, we sat to a sea and started for Pearl. The captain was relieved from incompetence later that year. Then I was transferred to school. Imagine that they were literally in a ship with nothing but gasoline. By the hand of God, and the way he described, we were at the middle of that river channel and no enemies fired at them, where it would be easy to shoot a rocket, maybe some gunfire close enough that will ignite that boat, and it did not happen. I mean, that can be a miracle right there, but imagine being in that kind of position. Maybe you have not something exactly like that, but in a situation where you just think like, wow, how did I just get by this? How did I just get through this? How did nothing happen to me? But it happens. I didn't know what school I had drawn. It turned out to be the Naval Security and Intelligence School for Internal Security Specialists, NEC 9549. The general trainings prepared me to set up security perimeters, security installations in buildings, and safeguards classified information. My training included special weapons, booby trap, identification, and disarming, and the detection of bugs, phone taps, transmitters, and many other subjects. I was specifically trained to prepare and conduct Pacific Area intelligence briefings. From the day I reported to school in 1968 until I left the Navy, I worked off and on for naval security and intelligence. After graduating, I was transferred to Vietnam. I had volunteered over a year before because I figured that my chances were better in the war than they were on that screwed up gasoline tanker. This was the first good news I had since leaving boot camp. I really wanted to fight for my country. I wasn't to find out what a real fool I was until a few years later. I landed at Da Nang and was bused to Camp Carter, the headquarters for Naval Security Intelligence in One Corps. I was interviewed by Captain Carter and commanding officer. The name turned out to be a coincidence. Captain Carter asked me if I thought I would make a good patrol boat captain, and I told him that I would. What else could I tell him? I thought he was joking when he told me I would have command of a boat and crew. He wasn't, and I did. Lieutenant Dewey, believe it or not, that is his last name. Thinking about that name brings me of that movie, Scary Movie. Remember with the scream mask and Officer Dewey? Yeah, that's why I laugh, because that's what that reminds me of. But all right, let me just carry on. Lieutenant Dewey at the Harbor Patrol, a division of Naval Intelligence, allowed me to handpick a crew. He gave me first choice of four 45-foot picket boats that had just been unloaded from the deck of freighter. My new crew and I spent 3 days going over every inch of that boat. We adjusted and fine tuned everything. We sanded and painted. One of the seamen even hung curtains in the after cabin. We checked and double checked the engines. My gunner's mate, GMG3 Robert G. Barron, checked out weapons and we began to arm our vessel. I have got to tell you the truth. Just looking at all those guns scared the shit out of me. I vowed right then and there that I would be the best captain who commanded a combat vessel in wartime. I learned to exist on only 2 or 3 hours of sleep out of 24 and never ate until I knew that my crew had been fed. We spent a lot of spooky nights patrolling the Donnog Harbor and river. One night, a rocket hit the ammo dump and the river's edge near Donnog Bridge, and it really looked as if the world were coming to an end. Another time, we engaged the enemy in the cove at Point Isabella near the Marine Fuel Farm and probably saved their butts. Landgaming was reported in the Star and Stripes, the armed forces newspaper in Vietnam. The worst moment came, however, not from Charlie, but from Mother Nature. A full-blown typhoon roared across the Gulf of Tonkin. To save the boat we put to sea, I maneuvered our boat in between two giant cargo ships riding at anchor off Red Beach and learned quickly what fear was really all about. The angels must have been laughing. What a sight we must have made. The wind was blowing so hard that none of us could go on deck. That meant that the two of us in the pilot house were stuck on watch and the man trapped in the after cabin had to man the hand pumps. The windows in the pilot house blew out and the rain felt like knives hitting our skin. Water poured in and I prayed that the man on the pumps would not become exhausted. I could just barely make out the two tankers. I could tell they were in more trouble than we. When we were on the crest of mountainous waves, we looked down on the top of the ships. When we were in the trough, we seemed to be in danger of their crashing down on us. One of the freighters snapped a cable and steamed slowly out of the harbor. Man, imagine that sight. I don't know if anybody's seen Delia's Catchers, where they're literally in the ocean and they're catching all that seafood that they bring in, and we get to enjoy our house with no worries. Don't even have an idea what these deli catchers people actually go through. But have you seen those episodes where sometimes they show the ways how ugly the ocean can really get? And I believe long time ago, like I want to say 2008, there was an episode where actually one of the boats from Delia's Catchers ended up sinking and their seamen ended up dying. I don't know how many of them, but I do remember something like that. But imagine how he's describing how they're way up there where he can see the cargo ships looking down at them. It's trip. It's crazy scenery if you really imagine it. The next morning, the storm calmed and we moved into the river. The breeze was floating down and we had to play dodge the tree trunks until we spotted a sheltered pier in front of the press club. We carefully pulled the boat alongside, tied fast to the pier, then collapsed from exhaustion. After a while, we drew straws to see who would remain on watch with me. The rest went to the press club. After a couple of hours, the crew returned and we went in. It was like nothing was going on outside. All right, you guys, I'm going to leave it here. I think it's a good spot to leave off, and we'll pick up on the next one because this image of what he went through, what he was describing, and being able to make it through that kind of storm in the ocean. Yeah, not many can speak of that. And those that could, pretty sure they will never forget it. So I'll leave it right there with that image of that crazy scenery of him describing what he went through in that ocean and the storm and how they were able to be between two cargo ships. Were lifted high enough that they were able to see down at the cargo ships and ended up surviving. Made it to the pier, safe, unharmed, but totally tired. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Trying to get this going in a way that it will capture people's attention, bring more people in, and just be able to learn two new things. This is something new to me. I think we can all learn something, and we all got to start somewhere. All right, you guys. See you on the next one.